From then on, Ender was either with Mazer Rackham or alone. The old man rarely spoke, but he was there, at meals, at tutorials, at the simulator, in his room at night. Sometimes Mazer would leave, but always, when Mazer wasn't there, the door was locked, and no one came until Mazer returned. Ender went through a week in which he called him Jailer Rackham. Mazer answered to the name as readily as to his own, and showed no signs that it bothered him at all. Ender soon gave it up. There were compensations. Mazer took Ender through the videos of the old battles from the first invasion, and the disastrous defeat of the IF in the second invasion. These were not pieced together from the censored public videos, but whole and continuous. Since many videos were working in the major battles, they studied bugger tactics and strategies from many angles. For the first time in his life, a teacher was pointing out things that Ender had not already seen for himself. For the first time, Ender had found a living mind he could admire. "Why aren't you dead?" Ender asked him. "You fought your battle 70 years ago. I don't think you're even 60 years old." "The miracle of relativity," said Mazer. "They kept me here for 20 years after the battle, even though I begged them to let me command one of the starships they launched against the bugger home planet and the bugger colonies. Then they came to understand some things about the way soldiers behave in the stress of battle." "What things?" "You've never been taught enough psychology to understand. Enough to say that they realized that even though I would never be able to command the fleet, I'd be dead before the fleet even arrived. I was still the only person able to understand the things I understood about the buggers. I was, they realized, the only person who had ever defeated the buggers by intelligence rather than luck. They needed me here to teach the person who would command the fleet." "So they sent you out in a starship, got you up to a relativistic speed, and then I turned around and came home. A very dull voyage, Ender. 50 years in space. Officially, only 8 years passed for me, but it felt like 500. All so I could teach the next commander everything I knew." "Am I to be the commander then?" "Let's say that you're our best bet at present." "There are others being prepared too?"
"No."
"That makes me the only choice then, doesn't it?" Mazer shrugged. "Except you. You're still alive, aren't you? Why not you?" Mazer shook his head. "Why not? You won before."
"I cannot be the commander for good and sufficient reasons."
"Show me how you beat the buggers, Mazer." Mazer's face went inscrutable. "You've shown me every other battle, 7 times at least. I think I've seen ways to beat what the buggers did before, but you've never shown me how you actually did beat them."
"The video is a very tightly kept secret, Ender."
"I know. I've pieced it together partly. You with your tiny reserve force and their armada, those great big heavy-bellied starships launching their swarms of fighters. You dart in at one ship, fire at it, and explosion. That's where they always stop the clips. After that, it's just soldiers going into bugger ships and already finding them dead inside." Mazer grinned.
"So much for tightly kept secrets. Come on, let's watch the video."
They were alone in the video room, and Ender palmed the door locked. "All right, let's watch." The video showed exactly what Ender had pieced together. Mazer's suicidal plunge into the heart of the enemy formation, the single explosion, and then nothing. Mazer's ship went on, dodged the shockwave, and wove his way among the other bugger ships. They did not fire on him. They did not change course. 2 of them crashed into each other and exploded. A needless collision that either pilot could have avoided. Neither made the slightest movement. Mazer sped up the action, skipped ahead.
"We waited for 3 hours," he said. "Nobody could believe it."
Then the IF ships began approaching, the bugger starships. Marines began their cutting and boarding operations. The video showed the buggers already dead at their posts.
"So you see," said Mazer, "you already knew all there was to see."
"Why did it happen?"
"Nobody knows. I have my personal opinions, but There are plenty of scientists who tell me I'm less than qualified to have opinions.
You're the one who won the battle.
I thought that qualified me to comment too. But you know how it is. Xenobiologists and xenopsychologists can't accept the idea that a star pilot scooped them by sheer guesswork. Think they all hate me because after they saw those videos, they had to live out the rest of their lives here on Eros. Security, you know. They weren't happy.
Tell me.
The buggers don't talk. They think to each other, and it's instantaneous, like the Philotic effect, like the Ansible. But most people always thought that meant a controlled communication, like language. I think you a thought, and then you answer me. I never believed that. It's too immediate, the way they respond together to things. You've seen the videos. They aren't conversing and deciding among possible courses of action. Every ship acts like part of a single organism. It responds the way your body responds during combat. Different parts automatically, thoughtlessly, doing everything they're supposed to do. They aren't having a mental conversation between people with different thought processes. All their thoughts are present together at once.
A single person, and each bugger is like a hand or a foot.
Yes. I wasn't the first person to suggest it, but I was the first person to believe it. And something else. Something so childish and stupid that the xenobiologists laughed me into silence when I said it after the battle. The buggers are bugs. They're like ants and bees, a queen, the workers. That was maybe 100 million years ago, but that's how they started. And that kind of pattern, it's a sure thing none of the buggers we saw had any way of making more little buggers. So when they evolved this ability to think together, wouldn't they still keep the queen? Wouldn't the queen still be the center of the group? Why would that ever change?
So it's the queen who controls the whole group.
I had evidence too. Not evidence that any of them could see it. Wasn't there in the first invasion because that was exploratory. But the second invasion was a colony. To set up a new hive or whatever.
And so they brought a queen.
The videos of the second invasion when they were destroying our fleets out in the comet shell.
He began to call them up and display the buggers' patterns.
Show me the queen's ship.
It was subtle. Ender couldn't see it for a long time. The bugger ships kept moving, all of them. There was no obvious flagship, no apparent nerve center. But gradually, as Mazer played the videos over and over again, Ender began to see the way that all the movements focused on radiated from a center point. The center point shifted, but it was obvious after he looked long enough that the eyes of the fleet, the eye of the fleet, the perspective from which all decisions were being made, was one particular ship. He pointed it out.
You see it. I see it. That makes two people out of all of those who have seen this video. But it's true, isn't it?
They make that ship move just like any other ship.
They know it's their weak point.
But you're right. That's the queen. But then you'd think that when you went for it, they would have immediately focused all their power on you. They could have blown you out of the sky.
I know. That part I don't understand. Not that they didn't try to stop me. They were firing at me, but it's as if they really couldn't believe until it was too late that I would actually kill the queen. Maybe in their world, queens are never killed, only captured or only checkmated. I did something that they didn't think an enemy would ever do.
And then she died. The others all died.
No, they just went stupid. The first ships we boarded, the buggers were still alive. Organically, but they didn't move, didn't respond to anything, even when our scientists vivisected some of them to see if we could learn a few more things about the buggers. After a while, they all died. No will. There's nothing in those little bodies when the queen is gone.
Why don't they believe you?
Because we didn't find a queen. She got blown to pieces. Fortunes of war. Biology takes second place to survival, but some of them are coming around to my way of thinking. You can't live in this place without the evidence staring you in the face.
What evidence is there on Eros?
Ender, look around you. Human beings didn't carve this place. We like taller ceilings, for one thing. This was the buggers' advance post in the first invasion. They carved this place out before we even knew they were here. We're living in a bugger hive. But we already paid our rent. It cost the Marines 1,000 lives to clear them out of the honeycombs, room by room. The buggers fought for every meter of it.
Now Ender understood why the rooms had always felt wrong to him. I knew this place wasn't a human place.
This was the treasure trove. If they had known we would win that first war, they probably would never have built this place. We learned gravity manipulation because they enhanced the gravity here. We learned efficient use of stellar energy because they blacked out this planet. In fact, that's how we discovered them. In a period of 3 days, Eros gradually disappeared from telescopes. We sent a tug to find out why. It found out. The tug transmitted its videos, including the buggers boarding and slaughtering the crew. It kept right on transmitting through the entire bugger extermination of the boat. Not until they finally dismantled the entire tug did the transmission stop. It was their blindness. They never had to transmit anything by machine, and so with the crew dead, it didn't occur to them that anybody could be watching.
Why did they kill the crew?
Why not? To them, losing a few crew members would be like clipping your nails. Nothing to get upset about. They probably thought they were routinely shutting down our communications by turning off the workers running the tug. Not murdering living, sentient beings with an independent genetic future. Murder's no big deal to them. Only queen killing, really, is murder because only queen killing closes off a genetic path.
So they didn't know what they were doing.
Don't start apologizing for them, Ender. Just because they didn't know they were killing human beings doesn't mean they weren't killing human beings. We do have a right to defend ourselves as best we can, and the only way we found that works is killing the buggers before they kill us. Think of it this way. In all the bugger wars so far, they've killed thousands and thousands of living, thinking beings, and in all those wars we've killed only one.
If you hadn't killed the Queen, Mazer, would we have lost the war?
I'd say the odds would have been 3-2 against us. I still think I could have trashed their fleet pretty badly before they burned us out. They have great response time and a lot of firepower, but we have a few advantages too. Every single one of our ships contains an intelligent human being who's thinking for himself. Every one of us is capable of coming up with a brilliant solution to a problem. They can only come up with one brilliant solution at a time. The buggers think fast, but they aren't smart all over. But on our side, even when some incredibly timid and stupid commanders lost the major battles of the second invasion, some of their subordinates were able to do real damage to the bugger fleet.
What about when our invasion reaches them? Will we just get the Queen again?
The buggers didn't learn interstellar travel by being dumb. That was a strategy that could work only once. I suspect that we'll never get near a Queen unless we actually make it to their home planet. After all, the Queen doesn't have to be with them to direct a battle. The Queen only has to be present to have little baby buggers. The second invasion was a colony. The Queen was coming to populate the Earth. But this time, no, that won't work. We'll have to beat them fleet by fleet, and because they have the resources of dozens of star systems to draw on, my guess is they'll outnumber us by a lot in every battle.
Ender remembered his battle against 2 armies at once, and I thought they were cheating. When the war real begins, it'll be like that every time, and there won't be any gate I can go for.
We've only got 2 things going for us, Ender. We don't have to aim particularly well. Our weapons have great spread.
Then we aren't using the nuclear missiles from the first and second invasions?
Dr. Device is much more powerful. Nuclear weapons, after all, were weak enough to be used on Earth at one time. The little doctor could never be used on a planet. Still, I wish I'd had one during the second invasion.
How does it work?
I don't know. Not well enough to build one. At the focal point of 2 beams, it sets up a field in which molecules can't hold together anymore. Electrons can't be shared. How much physics do you know at that level?
We spend most of our time on astrophysics, but I know enough to get the idea.
The field spreads out in a sphere, but it gets weaker the farther it spreads. Except that where it actually runs into a lot of molecules, it gets stronger and starts over. The bigger the ship, the stronger the new field.
So each time the field hits a ship, it sends out a new sphere.
And if our ships are too close together, it can set up a chain that wipes them all out. Then the field dies down, the molecules come back together. And where you had a ship, you now have a lump of dirt with a lot of iron molecules in it. No radioactivity, no mess. Just dirt. We may be able to trap them close together on the first battle, but they learn fast. They'll keep their distance from each other.
So Dr. Device isn't a missile. I can't shoot around corners.
That's right. Missiles wouldn't do any good now. We learned a lot from them in the first invasion, but they also learned from us how to set up the ecstatic shield, for instance.
The little doctor penetrates the shield?
As if it weren't there. You can't see through the shield to aim and focus the beams, but since the generator of the ecstatic shield is always in the exact center, it isn't hard to figure it out.
Why haven't I ever been trained with this?
You always have. We just let the computer tend to it for you. Your job is to get into a superior strategic position and choose a target. The shipboard computers are much better at aiming the doctor than you are.
Why is it called Dr. Device?
When it was developed, it was called a Molecular Detachment Device, MD device.
Ender still didn't understand.
MD. The initials stand for Medical Doctor 2. MD device. Therefore, Dr. Device. It was a joke.
Ender didn't see what was funny about it.